guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my October wrap-up. Alright guys, so I ended up having a very interesting October. If you saw my November TBR video, I made a very big announcement that as of November 1st, I will be leaving education and essentially quitting my job. So because of that transition and everything it really entailed, I did not have nearly as much reading time as I previously anticipated. So I only ended up reading about 8 or 9 books, which is pretty low for me, especially for October. I didn't read as many spooky reads as I had really hoped to get to, and I'm a little bit disappointed by that. But out of the 8 or 9 books that I did read, there were so many 5 stars, including a top fantasy romance book of the year. It was so good, worth all of the hype, and if you have not read it yet, you really need to pick it up. I loved it. Now, I am very excited to talk about all of these books with you guys. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram, Goodreads, and Patreon, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the books I read in October. So first up, we have Blood and Steel, which is the first book in the Legend of Thezmarr series that I am currently reading as part of a read-along over on my Patreon. So every month, we will be reading one book from Legend of Thezmarr and then having a live show at the end of the month discussing the book. And I am so happy my patrons ended up voting for the Legend of Thezmarr series. It is my first time reading it, and I am absolutely loving it. So this first book is following Althea, and she lives in this community where women are no longer allowed to practice with blades or any sort of weapon. So if they want to help in the war effort, they have to become alchemists or something else. Now, our main character is not okay with this, and she ends up being gifted a blade and practices in secret. Now, all she wants to do is become a warrior of legend, and she also knows that she is going to die on her 27th birthday, or around age 27, so she only has 3 years to accomplish this. Well, she ends up being found out that she's actually training, and because of this, she is thrust into this warrior, almost like tournament, where she has to prove that she can become a warrior of legend, along with her grumpy mentor that's kind of teaching her, and the story goes from there. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, it definitely had a Witcher feel to it. I know on the back of the book it is pitched as being similar to The Witcher. Very much felt like Suri in her like training camp and everything like that. But I am very interested to see where the story goes, and I ended up rating this 4.5 stars. And next up is not only my Patreon book club pick for October, but also my top read of the month and one of my top reads of the year. It is Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. I have been waiting for the audiobook of this book to drop for so long. It finally came out. I immediately read it and gave it 5 stars. I think this book is worth all of the hype. If you're unfamiliar with the story, we are following Elowyn, and she is the princess in this kingdom, and her father ends up locking her up and stealing her dragons, believing that she will bring an end to the kingdom because of a prophecy. Well, she is able to escape and actually starts up her own kind of secret kingdom, and then realizes that she needs her dragons. There is a bond, she's yearning for them, so she teams up with one of her father's rivals, and together they have to perform this heist along with a few friends to get her dragons back. And while all this is going on, there is a romance that is slowly blossoming, and it is so unbelievably good. The way I've pitched this is if Six of Crows meets A Court of Mist and Fury, and then you throw in a little bit of Game of Thrones. I love all of those things. This had all of those vibes. There is also a moment in this series that is straight out of Game of Thrones, like a full Dracarys moment that I was jumping up and down when it was happening. I just loved it so much. Now, the only critique I have of this book is some of the transitions and the beginning feel very abrupt, like we are told things and then they're not really explained and we just kind of go from place to place. So I wish that was a little bit more fleshed out. Now, I will also say I'm very intrigued to what the original version of this book was like, because I was a little nervous to start this when this originally released before it was picked up by a traditional publisher, only because I think it was almost 900 pages or over 900 pages. People said it was very dense. There was a lot of world building. This trad version is, I think, a little over 400, if not right under 400, and I didn't find that out at all. There is world building. I think it is done very well. I think the writing is very accessible, so I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I do actually want to pick up the original EPUB version at some point. I don't think they're ever going to come out with an audio, but maybe I can like flick through it. If you've read the original version and this new version, please let me know down in the comments below what were the big differences. I really want to know what was omitted, but overall, I am so excited to continue with this series. And next up is The North Wind. This is an adult fantasy romance that was loosely inspired by Beauty and the Beast and then Hades and Persephone. So in this story, we are following this girl that lives in a very brutal winter community that is protected by the Shade, which is this magical barrier. Well, the Shade starts to weaken, and that signals that the North Wind, who is this godlike being, desires a mortal to sacrifice. So the North Wind comes to the community, and he ends up picking the FMC's twin sister as the sacrifice. So our main character takes it upon herself to switch places with her sister while she is sleeping, and soon discovers that the North Wind doesn't actually need to sacrifice the main character, but instead needs a wife. So he takes her to his kingdom, and that is really where our story gets going. And both of these characters have a dark history and secrets that they're harboring, and it's really about them learning to trust and communicate while all of these other things are kind of going on. So there were parts of this I really enjoyed. It did feel kind of similar to A Court of Mist and Fury. There's a lot of healing and things like that. The pacing was pretty good. It kept me engaged throughout most of it. I did struggle a little in the beginning because I felt like a lot of stuff was a little repetitive. But my main issue with this is when I was looking through the trigger warnings, I didn't see anything about addiction, and our main character in this book is grappling with an addiction to alcohol, which I didn't know about going in, and it's just not something I love reading about. So that is personally a me thing. If you have no issues with that, you will probably end up loving this book. I don't know if I will continue with the series. It's very clear like who the next book is going to be following, but this was a fun, solid read, so I ended up rating it 3 or 3.5 stars. But if you're looking for a fantasy romance that it has this very winter atmospheric setting and is based off Hades and Persephone, I would definitely give this a go. And next up is Phantasma. Now, I've already talked about this book in almost every video I have posted in October, so I'm going to keep this very brief. I gave this 5 stars. It is a dark gothic fantasy romance, very reminiscent of Caraval by Stephanie Garber, except spicier and the consequences are much more dire. So in the story, we are following Ophelia, and at the beginning of the story, her mother has passed away, and Ophelia ends up inheriting her necromancy abilities. Now, Ophelia is also living with her younger sister, and they soon discover that they are about to lose their home. So in order to save their home, the younger sister enters Phantasma, which is this deadly competition that if you are able to stay alive long enough to become the victor, you are granted a single wish. And the one rule is not to fall in love in Phantasma. So the younger sister ends up entering, and then Ophelia realizes what has happened and decides to enter as well to save her sister, and the story goes from there. This also features OCD rep, and I thought it was done very well. I don't suffer from OCD myself, but I do have intrusive thoughts, and they are brought up many times throughout this book, and I thought it was depicted very, very truthfully. So I really enjoyed this, and I look forward to other books by this author. And the next 2 books are the most taboo books I've ever read in my entire life. So I actually talked about one of them at the end of my dark romance collab video that I posted earlier this month that I'll leave in the cards and the description. But they are The Wild and the Free by Webster. This is actually a bind-up of both books. Now, I will say please check trigger warnings and know what this content is about before diving in. This series will not be for everybody. I actually voice memoed a lot of my friends that I knew had already read this book prior to finishing it because there was a time I considered D and nothing. So just make sure you are comfortable with the content. But the story is following Devin, and Devin ended up having a twin brother who passed away. They were very close, and now Devin's mother is really suffering. She is shut down from life, really not interacting with her husband, Devin's father, or Devin. And Devin's father, Reed, decides that he is going to start fresh in Alaska. The whole family is going to move to middle of nowhere Alaska and try to survive and just as a fresh start. So on this journey, there ends up being an accident, and Devin's mother ends up passing away. So it is just Devin and her father, and they get to this Alaskan wilderness where they have to learn how to survive. And in doing so, a romance starts to blossom, and you guys can figure it out from there, and it goes from there. And once again, check all of the trigger warnings. I will say there is a big twist at the end that I did see coming because I asked to know what the twist was. But just make sure you're okay before starting this, and It's a lot, but I will say I did end up really enjoying it by the end. Now, the second book in this series, I didn't enjoy quite as much, and it also has a twist ending, but that twist ending I did not see coming, and I honestly wasn't crazy about it, but I still enjoyed both books. I can't really get into much about what the Free is because it's gonna give away spoilers for the Wild, but we're following a character that has a horrible, horrible upbringing that we meet in Wild, and it's her romance, and it's taboo, but it's really good. So once again, check triggers, but if you're okay with reading some really taboo stuff, I think you'll really enjoy this series. And next up is Grimstone by Sophie Lark. I've talked about this book in previous videos, so I'm also going to keep this very brief. But the story is following Remy, and after her longtime boyfriend ends up cheating on her, along with her younger brother Jude, move into their recently deceased uncle's house in this town that I'm pretty sure they've never been before. So when they get there, Remy immediately begins being blackmailed by the attractive and mysterious doctor known as Dr. Death that lives next door. And all of the community believes that Dr. Death actually killed his wife and his young son. And the story really goes from there. There's a whole mystery that needs to be solved. And overall, I did enjoy this. I did find the big twist very predictable, but that really didn't take away from me enjoying the romance. And there were some side plot elements that I didn't see coming that I thought were really fun. So this was a perfect read for spooky season, and I'm very excited to pick up Monarch soon. And last up are two novellas. So first up we have Haven by Claire Kent. This is the first book in the Kindled series that I have been wanting to read ever since finishing Last Light, which is a full-length post-apocalyptic romance that I really loved. I read it as part of a vlog I did with Jen from the Book Refuge, so I'll leave that vlog down in the description below. But I absolutely loved it. So I ended up really enjoying Haven. We're following these two people that are part of this compound of people that have kind of flocked together after a post-apocalyptic event. And they are just trying to survive, and they are slowly starting to have this bit of a romance, but also don't want to ruin their friendship. And it really goes from there. It's a very short novella, and I feel like anything I say is going to give away a spoiler. But overall, I loved it. I kind of wish it was a full length. I didn't realize that all the books in the Kindled series were novellas. I thought they were all full-length books like Last Light. But either way, I am eagerly anticipating the release of the second book in the series. And last up, I read Scream for Us by Molly Doyle. So I did get to read one spooky, Halloween type read. I binged this. It was super short. Now, I thought this was going to be very similar to The Dare by Holly LaRoe because they both take place at a Halloween party, and it's Why Choose 3 masked men and 1 girl. However, this was much more bloody and dark than I was anticipating. I don't know what I was expecting, but there was gore. But overall, it was a very fun time. We're following this girl named Quinn who ends up going to a Halloween party, and there is this guy that ends up being a complete jerk to her, throws a beer on her, and then she is saved by this guy in a ghost mask, and he takes her to this room and promises to help her out, and it kind of goes from there along with his friends. And overall, it was super, super spicy, but once again, a lot more bloody and gory than I expected. Alright guys, those are all the books I read in October. Thank you so much for watching, and please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of the books I mentioned, and also if you guys have any comments about me leaving my job, such as why I left, what business I'm going to be starting, anything like that, please leave them down in the comments. I would really love to film a Q&A about leaving education next weekend, so all of your questions are appreciated. And I'd like to say a special thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda, Erin, Leslie, Kat, and Lotta. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.